Good evening. Welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. And now, for your host, Kimberly McLemore.
All right. Good evening and welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses from across the country. I am your host, Kimberly McLemore, CEO and founder of the Women's Small Business Initiative, LLC, and award-winning author. And welcome to another night of sharing. With us we have He is the Artist. He is the Artist is an American Christian singer-songwriter from Central Islip, New York, formerly a secular neo-soul singer signed to Bentley Records under his biological name of LeeMann Bassey. He is the Artist discovered that his true calling was the Lord after hearing an inspiring sermon by T.D. Jakes online one day. That day he was inspired to teach the world about the Lord like T.D. Jakes did with his sermon, but through music. So without further ado, please help me welcome to my platform, LeeMann Bassey, better known as He is the Artist. Good evening. How are you doing, LeeMann?
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to this conversation like we talked a few minutes ago. It has been a while. We've been trying to get you on the show, so I'm excited to have this opportunity. So, LeeMann, why don't you just tell the listeners just a little bit more about who He is the Artist really is?
I'm a singer-songwriter, a Christian singer-songwriter from Central Islip, New York, and I just devoted my life to serving the Lord and to serving Him through music.
All right. So, LeeMann, why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about your journey? And, are you originally from New York? And when did you start singing?
Yes, I've lived in New York all my life, and I started singing actually on Instagram because, I was a cover artist. I just would sing covers on the internet, and one day a producer from my hometown discovered me online, and he invited me to his studio to record my first single, Honey. But he just so happened to just be online, and he just liked what he heard, and he invited me to his studio. And it was just one of those things where, God led me to Him, and we recorded my first single. And from there, it's only been up. So.
Okay, yeah, and so that's pretty cool. And well, of course, we all love the fact that we have the opportunity to do everything virtually, and you can do stuff online, and it's amazing how it has changed people's lives. Having that opportunity to be seen, because you just never know who's watching you. When you think that you're not being seen, it's that one person that steps up to the plate, and then here you are. He is the Artist, has something to share with the world. So talk about what really had inspired you beyond your, hearing T.D. Jakes. You obviously have been singing before. What was your inspiration to sing before?
Well, I definitely was inspired by the neo-soul artists like Erykah Badu and other artists. I definitely don't really take reference from the traditional gospel artists. I mostly take reference from the contemporary music world, and that's one thing that's very different about me from other Christian artists. I'm very much listen to secular music, and that's my unique perspective.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you take the secular music and do you blend it with the way that you do the music your Christian music that you're doing as of today?
Yes, I definitely blend it together. I definitely do a lot of cover songs, and those cover songs are mostly secular songs, but I make them Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was a couple of T.D. Jakes albums where he invited Christian singers on there, and they were covering popular songs, but they made them into a religious twist they put on them, and that definitely inspired my career to take secular songs and twist them. Well, not really twist them, but to change their message to be more gospel oriented.
Right. And obviously to reach another audience of people who may not have listened, or who aren't aren't into the original Christianity type music. And so, we are seeing a lot more artists who are doing what you're doing, but like I said, yours is definitely more of a secular, that neo soul type, implemented into your Christian music. And, the audience and my listeners are going to be excited, because later on we are definitely going to hear one of those songs that you have taken and made it your own, but we're going to talk about that towards the end. So, LeeMann, tell us a little bit more about your story and your journey, because obviously you didn't start out just singing just yesterday. So talk a little bit more about how you got there.
Well, I've always been some type of choir. I've always been from high school, from even all the way down to when I was a young kid in elementary school. I was always in some type of choir. I always loved to sing. I definitely always loved to sing. My mother would take me to voice lessons, and she always wanted me to be like an opera type singer. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't really what I wanted to do. But I was grateful for those voice lessons, and was grateful for her support with me musically. And mm-hmm. And from there on, I just kind of I gravitated towards jazz music. And from there, I just would listen to records, and I would just go with it. I learned how to scat from listening to jazz records, and I'm just a student of music.
Mm-hmm. Right, you are, and you didn't do formally music, but you have definitely been an indie artist, and you've built this, like you said, from the time that you were younger, and had the opportunity to, get those voice lessons and realize this is something that you really want to do. This was your journey, and you've continued to move forward with that. So, with the things that you're doing now, talk a little bit about some of the records that you have made, and what you got coming out currently, and what are we looking forward in 2022 as well?
Yeah, definitely. I have out a cover, or actually two cover versions of Something Something by Maxwell that I'm really excited about. I added a jazz, of course, the jazz that I normally do, but I also mix it with disco and funk music to make a really nice, they call that deep house music, that I made for his cover. And in 2022, I'm going a little bit more nostalgic in terms of, I have an album called The Faded Outro, which is actually inspired by the 1930s jazz era. And it's going to be about just learning to let go of things, whether it be criticism of you as an artist, or just anything that is negative, just to let it go. Because, God is always there, and God knows that, nothing really matters except what he thinks of you.
Absolutely. And the way things have been going today, we need that right now. Okay. We don't need to wait until 2022 to get it, because we've got a lot going on in the world that we are living in today. So talk to me about the sermon that you heard from T.D. Jakes that was online that turned your world around that day.
I just was listening one day, and he's a very charismatic speaker. So there wasn't really nothing that he said that was different than he would normally say. It was kind of just like I was listening, and I would just I contemplated about my life and how it was going, and I needed some belief in something more. And I've attended church from childhood, but something didn't click. But that one day it clicked with me, and I probably was whatever I was going through at the moment. Made me realize that, okay, why I was listening to that at that moment was because I needed to make a change in my life and what I was preaching with my music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes it's funny how, like you said, you it's not that you've never been to church before, and you've been there many times as a young kid, and we all understand what it means, but sometimes it just doesn't click. But when it does click, it makes a huge difference. So that one thing that clicked with you, how it obviously resonated with you in music, but how did it resonate with you personally in your personal part of your life?
Well, that I definitely needed to spread more I think at that moment in my career, I was going more of a trendy route. I was kind of just following what everybody else was doing because I was a new artist and I didn't really know the industry that well. But there, he always preaches about love and the most important things in life. And I decided to devote my life to having people focus on the more important things in life, and just let go of those things, things just that are just for the money. And I didn't want a career just for the money. I wanted the career to really, do something good for the world and be fulfilled.
Right, exactly. And that's the key. What you just said is that it's not always about the money, even though originally when we're out doing something with, in business and music, it's all business, and we think about, oh my gosh, how much we're going to make, how are we going to get there? And that's usually what happens first. But when you realize that you have to put everything else, you have to know what your purpose is before you worry about the money, that money will come. So, your journey has been a blessing in its own right, because here you are today making the music that you want to make, and you're doing it your way. You're not doing it the way other people think it should be done. And you're sharing this with your gift with the world. So what advice would you give anyone who's interested in learning about music, the steps you should take? Because you made an interesting comment a few minutes ago about the fact that you didn't know anything about the business of music. Talk about that and how important it is to understand the business of music, and then give some other people some tips on what they could do to continue to move forward in the journey if they would like to be an artist.
Yes, absolutely. Just believe in yourself, and to always know your purpose. Whoever you'll meet a lot of people in the music industry, but just know that just follow your heart and just go with your gut, because only you know what type of music you want to make and what you want to bring to the world.
Absolutely. So what did you learn though in the business side that you didn't understand? What have you learned, and how would you share that with our listeners this evening?
Oh, definitely about contracts. Even today, there are so many ways music companies will try and trap you into contracts that you didn't really sign up for, like you didn't know that you signed up for, and that is something that you have to pay attention to. Read reviews of other companies, and sometimes even now I'm taking risk on new companies that now I'm still learning to not do that so much. So I kind of got myself into something earlier this year, but definitely to always go with your gut and always read things over. So.
Right. Absolutely. And if you can get some legal help, that's important too. I would think that, especially, as you are getting larger and you're getting into these bigger contracts and so forth, you definitely want to have an understanding of what it is you're signing. And like you said, when you don't know, you don't know. And then you start to sign for things, you don't realize what you're getting yourself caught up into. So I absolutely agree with that. But then you also have a manager. So talk a little bit about the importance of having a manager as to help you get through the process of, getting your name out there, your music and all the other things that comes with that.
It definitely, my manager helps to vet things out that I normally would not be able to vet out, like the good and the bad, contracts and things of that nature that really helped me out a lot. So I definitely am very grateful for him. He definitely is connecting me with the right people. And when I say the right people, I mean that with the honesty of my heart. You can really get into, there are a lot of bad people who are out there who are trying to take naive artists and money, who don't really know the business like that. And it's very important to have somebody as a manager that knows the business and knows how to get you the right connections and to get you in the right places.
Absolutely. And, like I said, you being discovered on Instagram, just think how many other people who are going through that same process currently who've been discovered by just singing, whether it was IG or whether it was Facebook or whatever the case may be. And obviously you get excited and you want to have that opportunity to be known and be seen, but you can definitely be taken very quickly, like you said, in a way that's not fair to you because you don't understand, because all you really care about, the reality is just singing. And then you always have somebody who's not always going to be so willing to do right by you as an artist. So talk about some of the other experiences of what it is to be a music artist and the things, the good and the bad and the ugly of it. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I would say definitely. Well, first of all, I actually did want to make a comment on beats, about licensing beats and those type of things, and you'll get a lot of beat makers out there who will like send you beats and then those other things like that. Mm-hmm. Just be careful of that, and be careful of those type of producers in general, because sometimes those beats could be copied from somebody else, and you have to just be careful, because when you put it out to the world, and they have this thing called YouTube Content ID, mm-hmm. and then you can get into a lot of different situations with a beat that you purchased, but it's not really yours. So definitely, okay. I would say always they call it Shazamming. So always should Shazam the beat before you actually purchase it, because then it shows you what other artists are using it and where it may be coming from.
Okay, and that's important to know.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm sorry, you were going to say something else?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, just do a little digging, and that will do you a lot of justice in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that makes sense, because a lot of people are using beats, whether it was from the old days to up to now, and it makes sense. And there's so many organizations or groups out there where you can, like I said, purchase them. And even when we're doing our podcast shows, when we start, we do our intros and outros, you may be using a beat that you think that you've purchased and it's yours, and then find out later on that legally you cannot actually utilize that actual beat, so it definitely makes sense to know everything that you're doing. You need to do your research. You need to talk to people. You need to ensure that what you're into is legal, so that you don't get yourself in a situation that you can't get out of. And I think that's probably the most important part about this whole conversation, is that it's wonderful to be an artist, a music artist, and you can share your gift with the world, but you want to be able to know that everything you're doing is on the up and up, and that you don't have the problems that you don't want to run into, so that you can share, like I said, continue to share and write your songs for all of us. So you are a huge songwriter. So talk about that journey and what makes you think about your songs and why you write them the way that you do.
So I'm definitely an arranger first. So I definitely learned from just covering other people's songs. Mm-hmm. And just doing that, I kind of learned the how song structure, first of all, and then also how to create a melody, how to do all of those other things, just from covering songs. But my favorite thing always is arranging, because that's how I learned how to structure a song and really just make a record.
Okay. So that's interesting. So you take other songs, and being able to arrange them helps you realize how you want to write them. So that's interesting. So have you had the experience, or are you looking to do the experience later on where you're not using cover songs and just literally coming straight from you as a songwriter, developing your own first song without doing any covers and so forth?
Yes, I actually have a whole EP called the Book of Mary. That is all originals.
Oh, wow.
And that is the EP that kind of showcases a different side to myself. The showcases all my originals, as well as my first ever Christian number one, which I went number one, I believe, like a year ago. Like, I keep losing count of that, like a year or two ago. And I've been writing so many things and arranging so many things that you kind of lose count of those type of things. But because I'm not really doing it for the number ones, but so I'm just doing it to spread the word of God. Mm-hmm. But that song was an all original of mine. It's called Boom, and it went number one in South Africa.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. Awesome. So how was your 2020 spent? Obviously we know we were stuck in the pandemic where we couldn't move around, for several months. Was that your opportunity to express yourself more and do more writing during that time frame, having that downtime?
I did a lot of songwriting. As a matter of fact, that's actually when I created my EP that's coming out in 2022 called The Faded Outro, which is actually inspired by the 1930s jazz era. And that's when I really created that. And I'm grateful for that time period, because I don't think I would have made that album, or rather EP, if I didn't have that opportunity to think and to meditate and to really think about what I wanted to tell the world in 2022.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of people, complained about, I can't go anywhere, can't do this, can't do that. But then it really was an opportunity to sit down and, like you said, to think, to really bring out the best of yourselves, even when we thought it was the worst time in the world to not be able to move around, because we're so used to just getting up and going and doing our everyday thing and not realizing what we have lost because we had not taken the time to sit down and just say, I'm going to do this. I've been talking about this forever. And then finally we were brought to our knees at a moment of time that, this is where you get that opportunity to really sit down and get into yourself and to sit down and realize that there are much more important things to do. So, can't wait to find out more about that album when it comes out in 2022. And it's going to be exciting for everybody to hear, because jazz and then the era time of 1930s, that is going to be really, really very, very cool to listen to. So I definitely will be keeping up with you, like I keep up with some of the other artists that I have been able to have the opportunity to listen and interview, and especially working with Mike. He has been phenomenal as a manager, and so we have a good connection. So definitely looking forward to hearing your new album in 2022. So LeeMann, talk a little bit about how we can get a hold of you, and like I said, if there's anything else you want to share about what may be coming out for us this year and for next year.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at He Freed My Soul, and on Instagram and Facebook, and they're both at Find Love the Artist. And my music is available on all major digital music outlets. And the music that I have out, I have a bunch of covers I just dropped all at once right now.
Oh, wow.
Go check them out. Because I dropped a bunch of covers from my previous EPs that I took down because I had a different thing I wanted to do. And so I put them back up with all new cover art, and it's going to be a fun experience in 2022 with cover High Fashion by Roddy Ricch, the rapper. I sang it in a jazzy way. Loving You by Minnie Riperton. I put out a cover of. 2022 is going to be really fun. But the most important thing for 2022 is that EP, The Faded Outro, which is going to be 1930s inspired.
All right. Wow.
Oh, and don't forget the
disco
funk version of something by Maxwell. That's the big one right now.
Right.
That we're really, really excited about.
Well, yeah, and I'm excited because that's the one we're gonna play tonight. So you already told everybody, so so now I can you just ruined my surprise, but it's okay.
Okay. I was so excited to say it.
I know, I'm excited for you. Yes, and it's very good. I had the opportunity to listen to it, so I'm excited to share it with the world this evening. But before we do that, do you have any last words for our listeners this evening?
Just to believe in yourself, and just believe in yourself and pray to whatever you believe is the source, and you will get through if it's in His will.
Absolutely. Keyword. You just said it. If it is meant to be and it is in His will, it will be. Absolutely. Love it. I really, really enjoyed having you on my show this evening. LeeMann, you are amazing. And for everybody else, he is the artist. So, again, thank you for coming on tonight. And as we said earlier, before I close the show, we'll be listening to He Is the Artist Disco Funk Remix cover of Something Something by Maxwell. And of course, we learned all about what inspires us and what leads us to our true calling. And, that's some of the questions I always think about when I'm talking to people or when they're talking to me about What is their dreams? So what is your true calling, listeners? If there's something that you want to talk about, is there something you want to move forward in, you can reach out to me anytime at Kimberly at WSBILC@gmail.com. And let's have that chat. Let's talk about those things that you want to turn those dreams into those goals. And of course, if you want to hear more of Your Resource for Success, we do now accept monetary donations to support the podcast. And we have a Cash App available. Information will be in the below in the informational area of this podcast, or you can go to www.wsbilc.com, which is the website. Again, we would like to thank you all for listening to us tonight. We will be back next week with more amazing guests. Be sure to follow us on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts. But until then, enjoy the rest of your evening and good night.
I need you, sugar, chocolate something. Sister with a certain kind of something. Play with a cocoa kind of flow. Act like you know it. So it's cool. I wanna run with you. Play with a cocoa kind of flow. Act like you ain't. Play with a cocoa kind of flow. Act like you. Honey do sugar da 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 da.